Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Racial preferences in America. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. We begin with the 14th Amendment, which says very clearly that no state shall deny any person equal protection under the law. That means that all laws passed by the 50 states have to apply to everyone equally. Enter affirmative action, which gives a racial preference to selected Americans in hiring, school admissions, and other competitive arenas. If an individual American gets a preference, then he or she is not being treated equally with everyone else. It's as simple as that. In Michigan, voters struck down racial preferences for admission to state colleges and universities. That happened in 2006, and by a 58% margin of vote. Of course, it was appealed to the Supreme Court, which ruled this week, 6-2, that the people of Michigan have a constitutional right to say no to affirmative action in education. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor is angry about the ruling. Ms. Sotomayor is a true American success story. Raised by a single mother after her father died, she excelled at a Catholic high school in the Bronx and was accepted to Princeton University in 1972. While Sonia was a very good student, she believes affirmative action helped her.
The affirmative action of today is very different than it was when I was going to school. And each school does it in a different way. But I do know that for me, it was a door opener that changed the course of my life.
Ms. Sotomayor fulfilled her part of the bargain. She graduated summa cum laude from Princeton and then attended Yale Law School, where she prospered as well. In 2009, Judge Sotomayor became the first Latina Supreme Court justice in U.S. history. I met the justice in December. She's a very nice person who firmly believes that minorities in America do not have equal protection under the law. She believes that because of the past, when blacks and other minorities were kept back by the white establishment, they have never been able to catch up. Therefore, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment should carve out a special place for minorities, whereby they be given preference in some areas. The problem is that by giving one person preference based on skin color or ethnicity, you harm another person. The University of Michigan can only admit so many students. If a white student meets the criteria but is denied admission because a black person with lesser credentials gets a preference, the white person is not receiving equal protection. Therefore, it's a violation of the 14th Amendment. So it's kind of simple. Now, what should happen is that hiring, admissions, and other circumstances be based on achievement. So if you are a poor person and you achieve a certain grade level in school, as Judge Sotomayor did, that should weigh heavily in your favor. It's like a point system. Poor Americans get extra credit because they obviously don't have the resources that affluent Americans have. Therefore, you take race and ethnicity out of the equation, out of it. Let me give you another example. If a brilliant white student has 4 felonies on his resume, that works against the white student when applying for anything. Criteria such as character counts when you compete, and surely poor Americans who do well show positive character traits. I'd like to sit down with Justice Sotomayor and put that to her. If she does not accept it, then she's clearly wrong, constitutionally speaking. If she does accept it, we have a solution. Trying to right historical wrongs at the expense of hardworking people today is not fair. The Supreme Court did the right thing this week. And that's a memo. Now for the top story tonight, reaction. Joining us from Detroit, Attorney George Washington, who represents a coalition to defend affirmative action, integration, and immigrant rights. So let's address what I'm saying here. It is based on economics when you get into a point system. Would you favor that?
Well, yeah, we favor recognizing economics, but what I think you're absolutely forgetting, Bill, is that race, as Justice Sotomayor said, has a tremendous impact. Being poor and black is different than being poor and white, or being poor and Latino is different than being poor and white. And what affirmative action does is take into account the reality that black and Latino students do not have equal opportunity.
But that's an opinion. That's an opinion, and it's also subjective. And the 14th Amendment is not subjective. It basically says all Americans will be treated equally under the law. Look, Counsel, you know what you're arguing is theoretical. You know it, because it is all
not theoretical.
Yes, it is. There are some black Americans that are treated better than white Americans.
Come to the city of Detroit and look at those schools and tell me that people are being treated equal.
Listen,
come to those schools and tell me that people are being treated equal. They are not. No, it's reality, Bill. And what the court did and what you're doing is just ignoring the reality that black and Latino students face in this country. And let me finish. What's wrong with what you're saying is this. Every group in this society, poor kids, veterans, rural kids, and everybody can and does go to the governing bodies and get adjustments to recognize the inequality they face. What this law does is prevent black and Latino students from doing this. That is separate and unequal.
It takes
this
skin
is
color
blessing,
out
not
of
equality.
it. Look, you don't seem to understand, and I'm sure you do understand, you just don't want to understand it, that when the 14th Amendment was passed, when the 14th Amendment was passed, it was passed specifically for all races, colors, and creeds, everyone to be treated equally. If you treat a person of color in a different manner, that is a direct violation of the 14th Amendment. Now, you may be right,
Bill,
historically speaking, that blacks and Latinos have the deck stacked against them. But you'd have to overturn the constitutional amendment, which you can't do.
Absolutely. Bill, you're wrong. The 14th Amendment, the people who sponsored the 14th Amendment also sponsored the Freedmen's Bureau, special educational programs for black people, because they realized that what had been done in this country had to be taken account of and overcome.
With special programs, and they're funded to the tune of trillions of dollars to try to make up for the historical problems we've had. But you don't, and you reject the fact that other people will be treated unfairly. If
no, they
race,
will not be treated unfairly.
Yes, they will. If skin color is a precedent for obtaining a job or a slot at a university, someone will lose the job or the slot.
Bill, I heard you were fair and balanced. Could I say something here? Because the fact is that other folks in the white suburbs and the elitist schools have advantages over people from the city, just like they have advantages over poor people generally. And what these programs do is recognize that and make it possible. And the colorblind theory that you're advocating, which is not what the 14th Amendment says. What this has done is exclude 1/2 to 1/3 of the black and Latino students who went to the University of Michigan.
It's based on economics,
it does
not
exclude
skin color. No, it doesn't. Because you wouldn't know who the applicant would be. You would know their economic circumstance, but you wouldn't know what color they would be. Therefore, the job or the admission would be based on, look, here's somebody whose parents are making $18,000 a year, so we're going to give them extra points because, gee, look what they've overcome. That's the fair way to do it.
No, it isn't. You keep forgetting that race is a separate, independent, and much greater factor in inequality. Just look at the city of Detroit or Washington or Los Angeles, and you can see the kind of inequality that you and the majority are simply ignoring.
Look, the city of Detroit, the reason it's is a disaster is because it has been poorly managed. All right?
No, Bill, this goes back 100 years.
All the money. Come on, Counsel. Look, one more. I want to say one more thing, and I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap it up.
All right, good.
You basically here are trying to rewrite the Constitution because it's clear that every American has to be treated the same way. Not one group elevated, no matter how much injustice has been done to that group. Last word.
Thank you very much. Bill, every other group is getting special programs. In fact, you're advocating for poor students. What you're failing to do is recognize race, and what you're doing is taking away from black and Latino students the right to get programs that will make it possible for them to go to school. That's a new Plessy. That's not equality.
All right, Counsel. We appreciate you coming on. Next on the Rundown.